Greetings, everybody, and you are now watching or listening to the Powercast. Today, I'm your host, Richard Bailey Jr., and today I'm joined by Miss Dana Abercrombie. How's it going, Dana?
It is going absolutely wonderful. I am excited to be here. I'm excited to see your beautiful, luxurious home.
Yeah, I think it was time for a different background to try to switch things up. So we'll see how that goes. I want to start off this show by letting you all know our very good friend and our host, Mr. Gary A. Swaby. You probably saw on the previous podcast that he had a bit of a cold. Well, he actually had a sickle cell crisis and ended up going into the hospital. Now, the good news is that he's out the hospital because he got out the hospital today, but he still needs some time to rest and recover. So unfortunately, he will not be on our recap today, but hopefully he will be back next week. So he definitely wanted to thank everybody for their continued support of the show. We want to do the same, but definitely keep him in your thoughts and prayers that he is able to recover and feel better and hopefully return next week. But yeah, we just want to give him a shout out because I know a lot of you probably noticed if you see him watching the show right now, he's not here. He's fine. He's out the hospital. He got to recover and take his time. So we wish him well. But today's show, we're going to be recapping and giving our thoughts on Power Force Season 2, Episode 3, War and Ice Cream. So before we get started, we thank you for your continued support of the show. If you enjoyed the conversation, please leave your comments below. Let us know your thoughts and consider liking and subscribing if you enjoyed the content. So this first portion of the show, we normally give our takeaways. Since I'm hosting today, I'm going to let Dana give her takeaways first, and then I will share mine. So Dana, what did you think about this episode? What were your main takeaways? Let us know when you're ready to go. Oh, you're muted.
Yep. I had a whole monologue that I did. Oh my gosh. I just want to say that, it took 525,000 episodes, but we finally did it. We finally got the Tommy Force show. I feel that this, in terms of pacing, plot, getting to the point, characters, establishing everything, we finally got it. And this felt like it belonged in the Power universe. Um, this to me, it was excellent. It was just yummy, and it had so many different things going for it that even when you break down the title, the juxtaposition of war, and everyone going to war, and people crossing each other, and then the consequences of those wars, and then you couple it with ice cream, the comfort food, something that reminds you of happiness and peace, and then when you add on what's going on with Kate and the fact that she was trying to make amends, and how ice cream, something as simple as stinking Briars, by the way, the name dropping, they had their product placements. Remember, it was who says Toll House cookies? I mean, if you want some cookies, you just say, you want some cookies. Who says, now come get these Toll House cookies? And then they had the Briars ice cream. They showed that it was Briars and not Friendlies and not Haagen-Dazs, but Briars. I see you. I see you, sponsors. So, anyway, just like in the name itself, it was so important. You could take war, you can take the war on drugs, the issue that we had, the DEA, the FBI, CIA, I don't know, NBA, all of them was just in there. And again, with the something is trying to make amends, as apologizing for ruining someone else's life, and the memory of never having that ice cream. I just loved it. I loved it. So yeah, right off the bat, Kate is trying to make amends. This to me is like, oh, ever seen when something gets too happy and you have those happy moments? Even when you go like to the first season of Power, and hit, what was it, Vic and Gloria in the car? Yeah, we're gonna make it, baby. And then boom, she's dead. She was making amends. She went to her AA meeting. she felt sad and depressed. And when she was on that couch, I was like, oh no, she did it. She had this. I was like, there's going to be a needle in her arm, and she's going to have a drink in the other. But she was sober, from my understanding. She was just really tired and exhausted. And I was like, yay, Kate. And she got the ice cream. And this is like what I'm really, really scared because remember, we have an innocent. And Kate has been on her best behavior. I mean, the whole part of her admitting that the reason why she neglected and completely abandoned JP as opposed to Tommy was because he was black. And then the generational racism of forget the fact that you have a 14-year-old, questions there. What are you doing, Grandma? What is going on with Kate in her childhood? This made it open up a huge door. Like, what is going on with Kate? There are things that she's at fault with, but my God, pregnant at 14, was it well, you can't even argue and say, oh, consensual, but what the heck was going on in that household with her? So you have the fact that it's 14, but she was more upset that the child was black than the fact that your child is pregnant at 14 and then pregnant again at 16. Oh my black Jesus. Like layers to this episode. I loved it. So you had the whole situation with Kate, and I'm like, oh, she gonna die because it's just getting too positive. She's trying to come to peace with things. She was really honest and was like, it sucks to be sober because she has to feel the feelings, and they was coursing through her, but she still stayed on that straight and narrow path. So I'm cheering for her. She's gonna die, but I'm still cheering for her either way. So you had that situation, but then you also had, JP with all of these years wanting to know, why did you abandon me? And him getting that peace and that answer. And here's the weird thing with JP, because last season I couldn't stand him. I thought the whole family dynamic, I just didn't like it because it just felt like, cut and paste, especially when you look at, for example, when Darnell said Uncle Tommy, I flipped out like internally because I'm like, no, only Tariq can say Uncle Tommy. It was a little too fast, too quick, and I understand that I'm going all over the place right now, but I'm just saying, like, the dynamic of the family really felt like it was getting there to that point. Although, please don't call him Uncle Tommy because it's a Tariq thing. We don't know you yet. I don't know you. So no. So that aspect was really great. And also, it just really made me like, there's so many different layers to this family because I forgot the fact that JP is gay. So he's gay and he's straight and narrow, but he kind of want to help his brother out with the drug business. He does know the formula Dahlia, even though they seem to like not, they just completely dropped that this season. But he's really smart. I just want him to do more with this, and I also want him. I want to see him date. Like, who does he like? What are the men that he brings home? Like, I imagine, Stanley Tucci, but like a black Stanley Tucci. So that maybe more like a Giancarlo Esposito. Like, is it more of that? Like, I just want to know more of his personality, of who he is. So that was the first takeaway of gay family dynamic we got there. And then we have the whole situation with how does it go? Peter robs Paul to pay the piper or something. Somebody's robbing somebody else in order to pay the person that they owe. So we have the whole situation with Miguel, the Serbs, and everyone is just in money trouble. I like Miguel because, he seems to be a smart torturer. The fact that he froze the dude's hand and then broke it, who comes up with that? That's like an epic villain move. That's like the Joker situation. Like the Joker completely high on, I don't know, ecstasy or something. Like, let me just freeze your hand and then just cut it, just break it off. That's amazing. I like that part. So that right there is really interesting with that dynamic. But then also you have to deal with what I loved also was how they opened up more of the space. That was, the problem that I had with the first season was that Chicago didn't feel lived in. And just now where we're getting different aspects of Chicago and it's starting to feel more lived in. And even with that scene with that boy, who they showed how, violence and how innocent people are being kind of taken down because of the violence. You had the 8-year-old girl who was shot and killed. Accidentally did a drive-by. They screwed up trying to kill Tommy. They killed this 8-year-old child. And then you have someone who is an outspoken, I think he was like 14 or something, that speaker, the kid, delivering the speech at the rally to, let's stop gun violence. And then you have the fact that there were people trying to beat him up and get rid of him. They called him a snitch. How dare you talk bad about your neighborhood? So there's so many different layers just within that scene and within the community, of we want to do better, but at the same time, oh, why are you speaking negative about us? So right there, and then we know that I feel that Diamond is going to probably be a mentor to that kid. And remember, we got to teach you how to fight. You got to do the boxing. And I'm like, that's good and all, but is boxing going to get you out of a shooting? I'm just wondering. So that seemed like a really interesting dynamic that they played right there. And then what was really good was it also showed the pressures of the drug industry of which they're in and how complicated it can be when you kill someone and how it's now starting a war within, and how people are trying, or a lot of infighting essentially over because of Chewie, and you had that Jenard has this pressure of not wanting to start this war, but at the same time also hating Tommy, and that inner battle where what was his name? I forgot his name. I had his name written down. Wendell. His name was Little K Wendell. And Little K Wendell, how he's just he knows that he's not doing right. He did wrong, but at the same time, it shows that he is someone's kid. And you had the part with the grandma, which even though the cookies was hilarious, it was just to show you how people have different, the family ties and the ripples, and how you killed someone, but how it affects someone else. And so the situation with Little K, we all know that he had to go. We just didn't know who was going to do it, and the fact that it was Jenard. And it wasn't like I'm trying to keep everyone in line. I think it was more of just the complete pressure of everything. Because remember, just before he killed Little K, he got robbed by the Serbs because he took the money that was meant for them in order to pay Miguel. And they went and just completely robbed him. I thought they was gonna like, oh, you gonna shoot him? They shoot him in the toe or something. But no, they just took his ride. So you saw that kind of pressure and frustration. And while you can argue that, Little K had it coming to him, at the same time, you just saw that it was just this cause and effect. There was so much that was building up in Jenard, and how it's just really hard to be a businessman in general, all that pressure, especially when your life is in danger. But he took it out on Wendell, and that car scene was just, you could see all of his strength and anger in there. But his way of, I guess, escaping was, I didn't realize this until I saw that scene. I forgot that he dibble dabbled just a little bit in the drugs, like a little sniff here. It wasn't anything that was noticeable, but this episode was just really like, where did this come from? Where it was more than a sniff. The dude was saying you're getting high in your own supply. That's setting him off for even more. And then at the very end, when he drove to get the 2 bags of heroin, they don't call it. How do we get heroin if it's actually pronounced heroin? I don't know. That's a lesson for another day. The point is, this show is teaching me so much about drugs because I didn't know you can sniff heroin. Because even if you looked at BMF, Lamar, it was through the needle. So amazing. It just seems to have like this really interesting. I know they're not connected, BMF and them is not connected, but it's just really interesting that they would get him hooked on heroin. And we had this conversation before with Gary, because he's like the drug expert there. It's really hard to like become unaddicted to it. It's one of the most powerful of the drugs. So, and then the way how he was looking in the car, and he was like, with a little teeth thing, I was like, oh, he's addicted. So this is going to be a very interesting dynamic in the future episodes if they don't drop this. So I completely liked it. It felt like it was a massive 180. Like, where did this come from? Um, but that's the storyline that we're going with. I mean, you dropped a lot of storylines from last season. Like, where's the reporter? We don't want to see her again, but still, where's the reporter? So that is interesting. And then also we learned about the drug connections and how it works in prison with Rojas. So I think those were my three. Overall, it was really interesting. And I know that we argued a lot before about not really wanting to see the cop's life, but they hit us with that another double whammy because Stacy and that guy whose name I did not write down, the cop, but they were married. These are exes. That just came out of nowhere. Yep.
Let's hope they stay divorced. I don't want to see no reconciliation.
I mean, I was just wondering, do we even need that dynamic of we're exes? Like, is that important to the story? I don't know, but that really just came out of nowhere. But that was kind of my three main takeaways was that for the moment.
It sounds good. Well, excellent takeaways as always. And obviously, I agree with a lot of points you made. But yeah, so let me start off by saying I thought this was a very good episode of Force. I want to give a shout out to Shooter who wrote the episode. You may have to mute yourself because I hear. Okay. No, you're good. So yeah, I want to give a shout out to Shooter who wrote the episode. I know you posted an interview on our channel, and I saw there was a few comments on that interview. So I would encourage everybody to check out the interview because there was a lot of great things said about the show, about the characters, about the dynamics of everything that's happening. But I enjoyed this episode a lot. I do have three takeaways, and I have a couple of other quick points I want to throw in here. So the first takeaway of this episode, I'm going to talk about the Flynns in this episode. Obviously, Tommy is still trying to find out who killed Liliana, and he does end up meeting Walter. And Walter obviously does not outright tell him who did it, but because of how he's talking to him a certain way, in certain words he's using, he pretty much gives Tommy a hint that it's one of his own. So Tommy puts two and two together. He decides to approach, Claudia later in the episode, and basically, based on their interaction, he gets his answer. She tries to throw him off, saying, "No, it wasn't me," whatever. And then, of course, he questions that guard later, and the guard doesn't give her up. He kills the guard. So obviously, Tommy is coming close. He's already figured out that Claudia is the one. He kept saying that he needs proof to find out. To really justify the kill, but since he has already told her that she's dead, once he finds out, I am expecting him to kill that character now at some point. I don't know if it's going to happen at the end of this season, but it absolutely is going to happen now because you don't tell someone you're not going to do something and then you don't follow through. And again, that point was made in the interview as well, that Tommy is somebody who keeps it real, holds people accountable, and he actually follows through on what he says that he is going to do. So I look forward to seeing that happen in the show. But I do want to say this. What I found hilarious in this episode about the Flynns is, obviously the last episode, Vic told us, as the audience, I'm going to get back at my father. Okay? Yes. So we see in this episode that Walter is going to try. He has this plan to sell the bad pills on the South Side. I will say, again, I like how they touched upon racism because that guy is talking about, it doesn't matter if we kill a few monkeys. Because, again, they show you that, and then, of course, Vic did not like that comment. But Vic's plan has been to destroy Walter from the inside. So I do want to say when I saw him call in the courier getting arrested, so on and so forth, and then later on, the confrontation between the guy, Walter, and Vic, and then Vic shoots him, I thought that was hilarious. Walter's reaction was pretty hilarious. Like, what have you done? All this other stuff. So, and obviously he was happy about what he done. So I look forward to seeing where things go from here. Because the thing is this, while Vic wants to destroy his father, he has to understand the family is in trouble in general as a whole, because Dublin they want to get their payback for what happened. So I'm very curious to see how he intends to what he intends to do next to obviously hurt Walter, but he also needs to be concerned about his own well-being. So I want to see what happens with that from a storytelling standpoint. But I did get some enjoyment out of this episode because I already knew he was going to mess up that whole deal that Walter set up. So let's see what happens next from here. Second takeaway of this episode, I'm going to again touch upon, Tommy and Diamond in this episode. I do think it's very interesting that Miguel had them witness him torturing the other, his own family pretty much, because those guys are part of his family, torturing them because he figured that they were behind what happened. And the thing about it is that Tommy is very nonchalant. He doesn't believe that Miguel knows anything. But I think by the end of this episode, once Tommy and Diamond have now established that they now have business in the jail because they did a deal with Rojas, I feel that the fact that they came back to Miguel at the end of the episode and said, we need more product, and then he said, nah, I'm good for right now. That kind of tells me he is suspicious that they're doing some other stuff they haven't really been honest about. So I'm very curious to see what happens from here. Obviously, Tommy also was going to finally have his driving lesson with Maria next week, because that's what the whole text exchange was they had in this episode. So let's see what happens with that. But a few quick things I do want to mention about Tommy and Diamond's episode. I mean, their storyline in this episode. I do like that they had the whole thing about JP having a conversation with his son, trying to explain why he was gone all this time. And then, of course, you got the anger that D-Mac had for his father. So I'm glad that they showed them bond in this episode. But the other thing is that, at the beginning of this episode, when Tommy thought that he was being targeted, he gave JP a gun and said, hey, take this in case something happens. I need you for protection, for your protection. At the end of this episode, after Darnell has his heart-to-heart talk with his father, he takes the gun. So let's see what happens, because obviously, I know that the father wants what's best for his son, but the son is really into this environment of what's happening in the street. So I'm very curious to see what happens with that relationship as the show continues, because there's some issues there that is still unresolved. And obviously, as I said last week, shout out to everybody who left comments. I do think that JP is going to lose that bar. So stay tuned for that, because that'll probably be a very dramatic moment for him. Then he's going to have to help Tommy. So we'll see what happens. But one other quick point I want to touch on in regards to Diamond. Diamond does get his girlfriend to help sell the product in the jail. And you do see, again, the return of Rojas. I want to give a shout out to Jay Moore's reviews. I don't know if he watches our content, but he actually covers Power on his channel. And he is the guy that plays Rojas. So I think he did a very good job. I'm glad that they didn't just get rid of Rojas altogether, because last season, and one criticism that Gary and I had was Tommy just easily disposed of those people that were working for Rojas, but then we didn't see Rojas again. So I'm glad that they still showed him around. And I do have a question later in regards to whether or not that relationship is going to work out, because you saw that they basically forced him at the end of the episode, Diamond. He got his girl to go in there. They did a deal to basically get him to work with them. So let's see if that works out. I'm very skeptical as whether or not that's going to work out, but we'll see. And the final point I will mention about this takeaway is going to touch upon what you said earlier, Dana, about Diamond now probably going to potentially teach this activist, the young guy, I think his name is Leon. He basically teaches the young kid how to defend himself. Now, I will say this. I don't think that's going to end well, because one thing that I will say I acknowledge about this show, you saw how we had the previous episode where the girl got shot, right? They want to emphasize of stuff happening to the youth. And a lot of this stuff happens in everyday cities, to this very day. So I don't want to say that character is going to die, but it kind of feels like that's going to happen because he's on the right path of trying to do the right thing, trying to uplift the community, and it feels as though that he is going to eventually get taken out because it just feels that way. Either that or something is going to happen. It may not necessarily be that he gets shot or maybe he ends up taking drugs. Something's going to happen to that kid. And again, that's important because the CO is watching Diamond. Obviously, he gets a haircut in this episode. But if something happens to that kid and the CO acknowledges that kid was there with Diamond, now that's going to make Diamond look suspicious like he was a part of what happened to the kid. So I would pay very close attention to seeing what happens with those characters moving forward. So stay tuned. Go ahead. You want to say something, Dana?
No, I just wanted to basically say that it's season 4 of The Wire. Doesn't it want to introduce the kids in the school system?
Yeah.
It's season 4 because I'm assuming that conversations that are had are actually going to play out later on in the season. Because remember when the parole or correction, whatever, the parole officer was getting the haircut and he saw the guy come out of the thing, and then the other guy covered for him essentially. And that's when he said, oh, you need to start giving back to the community. You need to start giving haircuts or something. So I think that's how Jenard is going to, they were going to probably see like the youth to become more involved in this season, not as like a person thing, but like as a plot to see like, oh, look, he's helping out the kids.
Yeah.
So that's that situation. Yeah.
That 100% makes sense. So we need to see where that goes. But I have a very bad feeling that something's going to happen to that kid. Yeah, I have a very bad feeling because it feels like something's going to happen. But let's stay tuned for that.
If you looked at how the kids who beat him up, remember they initially said, oh, you think you're a snitch, you think you're better than us. That ends up being violence later on. You're not going to just have a boxing match unless some type of weird situation pops off and this becomes a Disney Channel. This is not going to end in like a boxing match and everyone just battles their frustrations out in a ring. That kid, I assume, he is going to die. I mean, you just don't have these random. You have to have people where that ends up happening. So him, what is it? D-Mac Money that he wants to be called now? D-Money, D-Mac. Yeah. I see him. Call him Darnell. Mama named him Darnell. His name is Darnell. He's gonna somehow get involved with this situation as well. So maybe it'll be some kind of payback. I don't know, but I do believe that D-Money Mac Darnell he's gonna just end up going. It makes sense. But then also when you talked about the bar, oh sorry.
Oh no, go ahead. Continue.
No, I was gonna just say we've never seen the bar since that one scene. What is going on?
That's a good question.
Is it just sitting there?
Well, maybe we'll see it next week or in the next couple episodes. We have to wait and see. But yeah, it just feels though because that bar is meant to be to keep JP busy, to keep him away from what's happening with the other business. So, and of course, he is also not watching his son. His son is still very much working with Tommy. So that's why I say there's a bit of a conflict that's coming with all three of them. I would like to see how that's going to be handled because there has been no communication about what's happening. So we have to see what happens.
What happened to TikTok? Did we just drop TikTok?
Oh no, he's still doing it, but they haven't shown us that on the show. They haven't shown us him actually doing the stuff. You just see him looking on the phone or whatever, but they haven't shown it to us that he's doing that. But we assume that he's helping Tommy that way still, based on their initial conversation the last time. So we'll see. Now, I do have one final takeaway, and the reason why I saved this as a final takeaway because to me this was by far the strongest and best takeaway that I have from this episode. And it's just really about Jenard's story this entire episode. Okay, in that same interview that you posted, they were talking about Chris Lofton is really growing as an actor, and he really shines this particular season. I felt that in this episode because, again, this character he's under a lot of stress. He has issues within his organization. And I also want to mention this too. What I like about this episode is that it takes place immediately after the last episode with the shooting, where it starts and Tommy's angry, like, who shot at me? He talks about it with Diamond. I like how it's so immediate, and as far as this is what's happening right then and there after that incident with Tommy and Little K. So I like that. But what I like about this episode with Jenard, basically, it is I like the Jenard character in terms of what they're doing with the character, but I have to say I'm very concerned about his future on this show now that he is using heroin, because that is a drug that a lot of people don't come back from that. Obviously, I do remember last season how he started messing around with the other drugs, and we saw that initially, what he was doing with that. But again, like you said, we hadn't seen that in a while until this episode, and then of course he's using the heroin as a coping mechanism because he's under so much pressure. That means it's not gonna end well. And what I want to say is the scene where he actually takes the heroin, the way they amped up the music and the vibe of that scene, that was like, yeah, it's a very warning, very dangerous type of scenario, and it's letting the viewer know this is the point of no return for this character. That's why now I want to see what happens. But I do feel very sad for him in terms of how it's going to impact Diamond, because we spoke about this last week. It could be a situation where later this season, Diamond has to help Jenard, and Tommy is not going to really like that. So I'm very curious to see what happens. But I just want to say, though, this entire episode, yeah, this character is under a ton of pressure. You mentioned the scene about him trying to approach Little K and kill him, and then we see the Toll House cookies. This is, of course, why I call myself the Cookie Monster in this episode, because I love cookies. I love ice cream as well, but that was the product placement. They were on point with that in this episode with the ice cream and the cookies. Yeah, they were on point with that. But it's just, you see the side of the grandmother that obviously she doesn't want to know about the bad stuff that her grandson is doing. She's just there to support him and try to protect him. And then, unfortunately, you see what happens eventually. He does get killed. But Jenard does that because, again, he didn't trust him. Because remember that after the Jenard's car was taken and he picks him up, the first thing he's asking is, why are you asking all these questions? Are you wearing a wire? And because he didn't like how Little K answered, he choked him out. So that's why I say the character is under a ton of pressure. And now using drugs on top of that, this is a recipe for disaster. So I like Chris Lofton's work. He did an excellent job on Snowfall, even though they didn't really utilize him that much in that particular show. But I'm very curious to see what happens to him moving forward, because I don't think the character has a happy ending. I'm just saying that right now, and unfortunately, but again, it's the way it's handled. Like, you want to feel sorry. You feel the character is still a bad person, but is really a flawed individual, because he's trying to do business. Because I remember last season, he felt a certain type of way about the fact that Diamond went away. And the whole time that Diamond was away in jail before he came out, Jenard was pretty much running the show. So when Diamond came back and decided he wanted to get back into this and he's pushed aside, I kind of felt and understood why he felt that way, which is why you're kind of rooting for him to try to get some type of success for himself this season. But it has not started good. From episode 1, this guy was struggling. So I can only imagine what happens in the next couple episodes. But I do want to say this was overall a very good episode. So many things happening in the show right now. So I'm very curious to see what happens next week, for sure.
I completely agree. And just as a side note thing, because this was all just coincidental, please no more Black people associated with monkeys. Because of this, you don't know what I'm talking about. Because this and the Erica Mena situation that popped off with Love and Hip Hop, let's just stop.
I agree.
I was like, he called them what? Yeah. I'm tired.
I agree.
Terrible.
Hopefully there will be no more mentioning of that, but we shall see.
But just as another side note, you see, you cannot call. You see what I mean? See, this is going to end up being a whole rant, and I'm going to try to minimize this. You see the impact and the disgustingness of the term monkey, and not to break this a love and hip hop situation, but right there, you see the direct correlation of what it means to with racism of when you call black people monkeys. So Erica Mena pretending like she didn't know what I didn't know what monkeys meant. She knew what that meant. And she has black kids. She went with a black man. And then when you have this show and you see with the white man how he calls black people, they throw it away. Oh, they're just monkeys anyway. Yep. And you see how that term is just thrown out there. These people aren't even human. They're monkeys. So you see the direct correlation, even though it was completely unintended. It was just a weird coincidence that episode happened to air, and we're still dealing with the Erica Mena situation. But that right there, for those who don't understand, that is why that term monkey is so disgusting. And there's other layers to it too, but this is not a love and hip hop monkey situation. So yeah.
I agree. Like I said, I'm glad that they're still, because I mean, we know from last season that there are certain characters on this show that are racist. So I'm glad that they kept that intact with some of the language in which they were talking in this episode to remind you of that.
And this is another thing. Sorry.
Oh no, go ahead. Continue.
I just wondered if Vic was never with Gloria, would he also have a problem with the term monkey?
That's a good question. I just wonder.
Like, is it because I was with the black person? I understand the blackness, and we're not gonna. Because I feel that he would have used that word had he not been with Gloria, because he is just that kind of like person. At least in the beginning, it gave off that appearance.
Well, no, because he had a good relationship with Seamus, who was the cop, and then also he was pretty close with CBI to some extent. He didn't just completely he stood up for them when he needed to.
When so I kind of feel like,
well, yeah. That's a valid question. Perhaps. So I will tell you what, Jeremiah Latumba, if you're watching this, I know you are a huge fan of the Vic character. I would like for you to answer that question, because I don't know. I kind of feel like Vic is a character that I think cares a little bit more about other people on the show to an extent, at least some of the other characters. I know and we know he cared about Gloria. But Walter obviously does not approve of that particular union. And you know what Walter's stance was. The fact that they were ready to sell these products on the South Side. That lets you know everything about what their intent was.
Dirty blacks. We're going to get them. We can't stand them. Yeah. No, we know how he would be. He's all for it. So I just wonder if it's like he genuinely would not use that term and was disgusted by it. Or it was like, oh, because I have black friends, or I was with Gloria. I just wonder. Random thought.
Yeah. Well, I'm very curious to hear what people have to say about that comment. So definitely leave your thoughts below. But now I think we're going to get into our question segment, because there are a few questions that I have. And if Dana has some other questions, she can definitely chime in, because I don't know if she has any questions. I have 3 particular questions I wanted to ask that we're going to discuss. And obviously, if you are watching the show, I would encourage you to also leave your comments if there's other questions that you have, and if you also have answers to some of these questions that I'm going to put out here. So my question number 1, and I'm going to start with Jenard, okay? Because as I've already mentioned, I think this was his episode in terms of everything that happened to the character. This was really about him. So my question is, after watching this episode, what do we feel is next for Jenard? And will his drug use become a bigger problem? So do you want to go first, Dana? And I'll go after you.
Sure. Here's the thing. I don't know. The way how it just seems so ominous with that music and him using the drugs, it doesn't seem like it was a hit it and quit it situation. Like, oh, I was just stressed and that was it. I genuinely wonder if this is going to impact not only just him and starting acting reckless, and whether or not it's going to cause Diamond to have to come in and be Captain Save-A-Ho. And will that jeopardize his parole? You have the parole officer who's literally in his butthole. Everything that he does, he has to be clean about it. So with Jenard not being fully capable, does this mean that Diamond has to now go back and do his duties that Jenard wouldn't be able to do? I just don't know the level of incapacitated that he will become. Also, on top of that, he's saying, oh, yo, I got the money next week, when in all actuality, he doesn't. So what is going to happen? This is not like your average bill collector where they just come and turn off your lights. They come and turn off your soul and you be dead. So I wonder what he is going to do in those moments of desperation in order to get the money. We do know, for example, that Tommy and Diamond are doing very well, which is why they asked for a re-up and they asked for something bigger. Is this going to start causing an inner war again where Jenard may end up robbing Diamond and Tommy in order to get the money? Because the streets does talk. I wanted to say there was like two quotes in here that really was like, ooh, that's deep. That was a little Shakespearean. Was for those that'll tell don't know, and those that know won't tell. And I feel that that could be the theme for the coming episodes, or you could even argue for the other part of the season. Just basically saying that, those who have that information is not going to tell you everything. And those who don't have that information, they still not going to tell you. So you're just out here wondering, and you're going to have to start doing things on your own in order to find out the answers. So I wonder how that is going to trickle down this season, especially with Jenard. He is the one who is in the most trouble. And when you're in the most trouble, you become the most desperate. And again, I don't know how that drug usage is going to start impacting. And I know that these shows are not related, but it gave me BMF Lamar vibes in the terms with the drug addiction. It was very sad. But then also on top of that, you have that branch of the CBI that broke off that's part of Jenard. What's going to happen with them? Will this start causing infighting? Will this start being like, I'm the leader now, so listen to me? And then again, will Diamond have to step in? I'm more concerned about Diamond than anything else. Because again, once you have things being on the straight and narrow and looking okay for you, what's really going to happen? And even though Diamond is doing the sneaky sneak, and you see that he's messing with the correctional officer, and making sure that the drugs run inside the prison. One slip up, literally, and that he has a lot to lose as well. So I don't know what could happen. But if we're getting dramatical, Diamond has to be that person who's impacted the most, because he does have more to lose. He has his entire life to lose and go back to prison. So yay.
I agree. Definitely some good thoughts as far as the what you had to say about that particular question. I will say this. Obviously Jenard is in a relationship right now with Shanti because of that close relationship. I'm sure that here's the thing. It is sad to see the character take this route, but I also am very curious to see from a performance standpoint how the character changes, because there's going to be certain things that I think he's going to do. Maybe his behavior is going to be a lot more erratic. His interaction is going to be somewhat different. So I want to see how he's going to put that on from a performance standpoint. But because I think others are going to definitely start to notice he's off or he's doing something. And I think that Shanti is a character that will obviously potentially find this information out because she is the closest to him right now. The other people in his organization, as you mentioned, his other right-hand man, they're definitely going to find out about this, and they may, I don't know how they're going to react to that, because the thing is that Jenard already doesn't have control of the people in his organization. We saw that with what happened with Wendell, aka Little K. So he already has some people questioning whether or not he's fit to be a leader. So now it's going to get a lot more complicated now that you bring the drugs into this equation. And then the whole thing about owing money, paying all these people money, that is a problem as well, because, I mean, obviously, if you're messing around with drugs, most of the time, all of the money, everything goes to the drugs. So that's why I want to see how is he going to deal with this other stuff. And I agree with you 100%. This did give me vibes of BMF as well in Lamar, because that character, and again, that was not what I expected them to do with Lamar as a character at the end of the season. So I was a bit surprised to see that. It was sad, because even though this guy is a bad guy, you're still you like the character to an extent. So you don't want to see them go out that way. I mean, obviously, death would be a fitting way to kill a character, but now they're suffering in the form of taking drugs. I think that's kind of I think a little bit worse than death to some degree, like Little Meat said on the show. But no, continue. You gonna say something? Oh no. But I mean, but to answer the question though, I just think it's gonna definitely be bad for business for Jenard moving forward. I think when Gary posed the question last week about will Diamond have to get involved, I think Diamond will have to get involved at some point to check on his brother. It's going to be very tough for him. And to go to the point of what you said earlier about Diamond having to be very careful around the correctionals officer that's basically watching him. I mean the parole officer. I honestly feel like the only way that Jenard can be saved as a character is if he is arrested and taken to rehab or something, because if not, the character probably will get killed at some point. So maybe that's where the parole officer comes into, because they don't like the fact that Diamond would be around. He can't be around anybody that's a felon, none of that other stuff. But also the guy does random drug tests. So if he sees this guy is interacting with Diamond, so on and so forth, that could be a problem. So that's why I want to see how they handle that. But I do kind of feel like by the end of this season, I could see Diamond having to make a very tough decision about Jenard. And it may be that he has to basically get him arrested or taken away instead of killing him, because obviously I don't want to see him have to kill his brother. That would be a very dramatic turn for the character, but I don't know what's going to happen. But all I'm saying is that I'm very curious to see what happens next, because when I saw Jenard take the drugs at the end of the episode, I was, this cannot be good. This cannot be good. But obviously, as a viewer, I want to see what happens next. So let's see where they go from here. You're muted.
Are you saying you don't want that scene of Jenard and Diamond by the water near a bridge going, "Hey, mom, my brother's keeper. Hey, mom, my brother's keeper." Because it's leading up to that. It's leading. If you really look at it, you could see such heavy influences. I mean, you have, what is it, CBI, and what was it called, CMB in the group. Remember, in New Jack City. You have these brothers. If he starts messing up, I can definitely see a whole, "Are you my brother's keeper" moment. It can get there. Maybe not this season, maybe next season, but somebody is going to start keeping the brothers. I do see this. But another thing that you brought up that I really wanted to question, because I was like, well, you said Jenard was the bad guy. Is Jenard really the bad guy? Like, what would be your definition of him being the villain? Jenard, if you really looked at it, him and Diamond were together. They were doing their things. Yay, us. Diamond had to go to jail, even though he was the leader. His brother steps in to make sure that whole businesses did not, go to the wayside and continue with the money. Obviously, make sure that everybody was okay. It's not just I'm going to be it and myself. You're running the business so that him and everybody was eating. Everyone was eating. And then all of a sudden, Diamond came back after years of being gone and wanted that top position. Are you not going to feel somewhat slighted that it's not like, let's be equal, but no, I want my top position, even though I've been gone for all of these years, even though you have been holding it down, even though you may have succeeded what I have done, I'm still going to be considered head than you. I'm going to be the one that tells you what to do. Is he genuinely the bad guy, or is he someone who feels like he was just like betrayed? Like there was not a proper conversation when this whole thing happened. So this is all, again, going back with Kate. Remember, you need to make amends. Is it the fact that they just never really sat down and had that conversation and made amends? And maybe even just a decent I am sorry would have deaded a lot of what would have ended up happening in the future with them splitting off. Remember, they were guns drawn at each other in the end of the finale. You take this section, I take this section. I don't want to see you ever again. It opened up with "you're dead to me," essentially. Yep. So, is he really the bad guy, or is he someone whose feelings are hurt?
Yeah, I mean, he really. That's a very good, fair point. I do believe, he is somebody whose feelings are hurt. And like you said, because of the lack of communication between both of the brothers, this is why I'm very curious to see what happens once Diamond finds out that now his brother is doing drugs. Because I kind of feel like when something really serious happens in a family, if there is some type of beef, well, at that point, you need to talk with each other because somebody may actually die. So I'm very curious to see. But no, he's not a bad guy. I will say this, though. For the people that are fans of this show, and they are huge fans of Tommy, they know that Tommy has beef with Jenard, vice versa. So if it comes down between Jenard and Tommy, they're probably going to choose Tommy. So,
but if it comes down between Diamond and Jenard, Diamond is going to choose Jenard.
Oh yeah,
that's his brother.
Yeah.
So.
Oh yeah, absolutely. So, and the thing is this. I know it was also mentioned in that interview that we're going to see a different side of Joseph Sikora as Tommy. Now that Tommy has a family, he has his new family now that he has. I kind of feel like he would be somewhat sympathetic towards Diamond's issue with Jenard, but I don't know to what extent, because, and that's what I'm curious to see if that's something that we are going to see, because I kind of feel like, because Tommy has a brother as well now, you kind of understand, well, I don't get along with Jenard, vice versa, but maybe I would give some respect to Diamond to deal with the situation and not get involved. But we have to wait and see what happens, because obviously it's going to escalate. But as far as Jenard continuing to do drugs, others are going to find out about it at some point. So I want to see which direction they take that storyline in.
And it also would make up for the. Sorry.
Oh no, I was just going to say, but no, I agree 1,000% with your point that he feels that he was slighted. He's not a bad guy. We'll just say a lot of people on this show are flawed characters, I guess you could say, because there are certain like I like Jenard as a character, how he interacts at certain times. He's a cool character. Like I laugh when he got the cookies in this episode. Ooh wee, yeah, it's funny stuff like that, right? This is why when I see this guy now doing drugs, it's a very sad, dramatic turn for the character. So I want to see what they're going to do. But no, continue with what you were going to say.
No, I was going to just simply say, in a way, I feel that Power, the original, had its flaws in terms of the dynamics with Tommy, Kanan, and Ghost. When Tommy lost Kanan, there really wasn't a grief process for neither Ghost nor Tommy at that point.
Yep.
There wasn't even like an outrage and an anger situation. That was all placed on Tariq. But that was technically his brother. If you looked at it, the three of them, they were brothers. Weird, but they were all brothers in that way. And so it never really gave time for anyone to mourn each other. If you look at it, out of the three, there's only one that's left. So imagine losing your two brothers. And I think we kind of failed with not having Tommy have that whole grieving process. And I don't want flashbacks because I just don't like flashbacks. I think it's a cheapened way. But if you really look at it, this would probably give Tommy not something to fight back on, because it's like, I lost Ghost, I lost Kanan. You can say the whole part with Lakeisha. You could say the other with Holly. All the people that he did lose. What will happen if now it comes back on his family? And is he at that point where maybe not now in this season, maybe later on? What happens if he has that brotherly bond continue with, say, Diamond? Because I don't think they're there in brotherly yet. But just to say, what would happen with that? Is he someone who will fiercely protect him because he didn't protect the other two? So that would be interesting to see with the overall arc of his character, because I want something new than what we've got for the previous, 6, 7 seasons with the regular power.
Yeah,
I want him to fight for something. And what will happen if death comes to those people now? Is he able to fight? But not in second season, because we're just not there yet.
I agree.
I'm still trying to deal with Darnell calling him Uncle Tommy. Like, I was ready to call Tariq up and come get this boy and fight him. He's calling your Uncle Tommy. He's known him for 2 seconds. We're gonna fight. I didn't like it.
Yeah. Well, we'll see. That's a very good. These are very good questions. I'm very curious to hear what everybody else thinks as well. So looking forward to seeing how a lot of this stuff pans out. So I think I'm going to go to my next question. This has to do with Diamond in this particular episode. This is really a 2-part question. So let's start with the first part. So we did see that Diamond eventually gets Rojas they basically force him into agreeing to this deal so that he can distribute the product inside the jails. My question is, how long do you think this particular partnership is going to last? Because obviously Rojas has beef with Diamond because he put him in the wheelchair. So I don't think this is going to be something that lasts. There's going to be some conflicts, but I'm curious what you think about that.
I'm waiting for that girl to get turned in. It's the correctional officer someone's gonna find out. Someone's gonna start talking. They was being a little too Captain Obvious with them eyes following the popcorn bag. I know we meant to establish him to show us, but it just seems to me that she's gonna be taken down soon. I don't know. I just don't know how. I don't know if it's gonna be from the PO. I just don't know. So that would be really interesting. But yeah, she's going down.
I agree. I think that Diamond's mistake was mixing business with pleasure, because if you recall, when he approached her about this, she said, "Oh, I need to be paid for this. I need to cut something from this." And I think that that's going to be an issue, because if there is a problem where Tommy and Diamond run into a shortage of some other products that end up getting missing, like they did in this episode, and they're short on money, Diamond would then have to have an issue with his lady to try to get some of that money so he can fulfill his payment to Miguel. So I'm very curious to see, because I don't think that was a wise decision to do that. Obviously, to get the product in the jail, now you have more control, more territory, you could say, but that's going to come at a cost. And I'm very curious to see what the fallout will be from that. I agree with what you said. That correctional officer was definitely going to happen to her, So let's stay tuned for that.
Well, it's simple.
What's that?
Remember, it's 5 letters, 1 word. Who did they knock out in order to start selling the drugs in prisons?
Well, that's true. The other thing is, I mean, I don't know why Diamond didn't really think about this. They could easily have taken out Rojas at some point, but obviously, they could take him out and make it look like an accident if it happened in the jail cell. That probably is what will be the end game for this, because I don't think that this guy is going to work with Diamond for a long time. There's going to be an issue with that because he has a legitimate issue with Diamond. So,
well, remember he told that guy.
Yeah.
When who was pushing him around? So
yeah, he told him, they run this joint. This is their territory, so they don't like anybody coming in trying to take over their territory. So let's see where this goes in the next couple episodes. But the other question I wanted to ask about Diamond, we didn't touch upon this, all right? And I caught this towards the end of the episode when Diamond was having a conversation with Tommy. He had warned Tommy about the fact that now there is a task force. And I thought it was very interesting as well that Jenard was the first one to find out about the task force that now is started. But he tells Tommy about the task force, and Tommy's very nonchalant, like, oh, I ain't worried about that, because he's too busy admiring his car and stuff. But later in the episode, Diamond, as he's having a conversation, they're back in the area with Miguel. They go visit Miguel again. Somebody is sending a text to Diamond, talking about they want to meet up, and he's talking about, oh, I don't. He's basically talking about, oh, there's nobody's texting me. My question is, who do you think that person is? Could it be the return of Adriana, the reporter, or is this somebody else that we don't know that Diamond has some type of connection to?
It would make them upset. I mean, if you look at it this way, remember they announced the joint. I wrote it down because it was 18 letters. It was CPP, FBI, DEA task force. Where I was like, couldn't you just come up with like a name, Scorpion or something? I don't know. Maybe not Scorpion because those were the group of people who killed that guy. But I don't know, the Fart Factory. Point is, yeah, they did. It would make sense because you're holding a press conference. You had the rally. Who attends those? Who comes out with the little microphones and the little records and everything? The reporter. Yay. So, who is the reporter? But that girl from the previous season that I really wish they would have just dropped, but they did not. She could easily make that call. But here's the thing also. It said unknown caller. So if I'm going to start being Nancy Drew here, my brain is going to go, unless he blocked her and she's calling from another number, it would show up as not an unknown caller.
Yeah.
Right?
That's true.
So then maybe it's someone else.
I have another
theory. Because if you're blocked.
Yeah, that makes sense. I have another theory as to who I think it is. Why not the return of Sheamus, the guy that was on the payroll? Because this guy was very desperate last season to basically.
He's in jail.
Oh yeah, you're right. He is. Yeah, you are right. He is in jail. So
remember the
I don't know who this
parole
person
was
is.
like,
Yeah, they did get him. That's a good observation. You're right. They did take him out the picture. So I don't know who this person is. That is going to be, and again, the one thing that I will mention is that Diamond and Tommy, they do communicate. Although when this season started, they were not telling each other everything that's happening. So there's obviously going to be some secrets that they're still going to keep from each other. So if this is somebody who might be an issue, I could see him not telling Tommy right away, but then waiting to tell him later. So I don't know who this is though, but I'm very curious because again, that's just was thrown out as a hint to let you know there's something else going on with Diamond. So I guess we have to watch and see who it eventually will be. But we gotta stay tuned for that.
I mean, unless we would probably have to go back to season 1. I know there was the people who were in prison, but I don't think it would be them. The reporter you already said, but that doesn't. Nancy Drew says that's not right. I don't know unless it's like some big baddie that was just I don't know. It's the Jamaicans. Boom. Probably get the Jamaicans.
Well, maybe we will get the Jamaicans in season 3 of Force. You know, I don't know. They're focused on Miguel's crew this season in the fallout with the Serbs, so I don't know if they're going to introduce another gang, but guess we'll have to wait and see. But that's a good question. I'm very curious what people think in the comments, what their thoughts as to who that person is that sent that text to Diamond. We'll see. And my final question here, and you can ask any other questions after this. My final question, we sort of touched on this earlier, but we can expand upon it now. Now, you mentioned earlier in this episode when Diamond's in the barbershop, he's giving the parole officer a haircut, and then you see the other guy, his name is Big Smurf, right? Basically come out, and of course, this guy is very suspicious of him. So my question is, and this is just my theory, a question. What do you think is going to happen to this parole officer in the future? Because
He's
now
a nosy
that he has
Nancy.
seen, you say what?
He's a nosy Nancy.
Yes, he is, and I guess that is his job, right? But my thought is, he saw Tommy last week. Okay, you see this other guy, Big Smurf, in this particular episode. I kind of feel like something might happen to this parole officer. I don't because all these people that are around Diamond, they're all criminals, and Diamond himself is a criminal as well. So I kind of feel like if at some point it gets into a situation where he's seeing them conducting activities, he is going to try to stop them. That's his job, right? So I'm very curious to see if you think something bad is going to happen to this parole officer, because it feels like that can happen. But it would be very bad for Diamond if it does happen, since this guy, his responsibility is to watch Diamond. So that's got to watch out for that.
Yeah. No, I think that it's again, nosy Nancy. And he was like surveying the land. When that guy walked out from the basement and came out through that door, he was like, what's going on? Granted, he didn't say anything. And that's when the other customer, or no, the employee there, the guy who was cutting hair, he jumped up and said something as a distraction. The thing with nosy Nancy is you can't distract them.
Yeah.
They're very focused. Yep. So I think he is going to start figuring out what's going on. And then you could use maybe the bug. This is how Diamond has to be involved with the youth and the kids with the boxing, because it works as a great distraction. But I do see him being one of those, let me go follow him with the car situation to find out what's really going on. Or random thought, what if push comes to shove, Diamond pins everything on Jenard in order to save himself. And it was like, I did time for you. Figure it out. You have to do time for me.
That makes a lot of sense to me, because like I said earlier, I feel like the only way Jenard gets out of this season, he would have to get arrested and be put away. Because I feel like if this character just stays out here in these streets, messing with drugs, not paying people, he will get killed. So I kind of feel like in order to save him from getting killed, he probably needs to get arrested and go away for some time. But obviously, if Diamond is the one that does that, and because they already have an issue they already have issues with each other, that's going to hurt him even more. So I'll be very curious to see if that's what they do. And here's another thing. What if this parole officer is taken out? What if Tommy is the one that has to take out the parole officer? That would be bad for Diamond as well, because again, this guy has seen Tommy. He doesn't know anything about Tommy. At least he hasn't said that he knows anything about Tommy. So I kind of feel like indirectly, if this guy somehow gets in the crosshairs when he's with Diamond and they have people coming after him or whatever, if he ends up killing this guy, or this guy ends up getting killed by anyone else, it's a bad news for Diamond. So I don't really know what's going to happen. But the parole officer, I think, is on borrowed time, unfortunately.
No, he is fortunately on borrowed time. He won't be there much longer, but we do have the bigger issue of Tommy. Remember, everyone is looking at Tommy because he's like a ghost. And yet he was so careless with his ghostness that they was able to pull prints. Remember, they did that little secret hide, when they went and pulled the prints off the car in this very fast and furious routine. So anything that Tommy does is obviously going to bring attention. And they put it to, and here's what I was like really interested with. You know how cops are usually depicted as just being dumb?
Yeah.
And this one, I think Stacy, she put it together, was like, no, Tommy went and killed the pancake boy. And I was like, whoa, you got that in the first try. Because usually they're just like dumb. So I like how we're just like making it smart, but I wonder if it's becoming too easy. Don't make it be too easy for the cops.
Well, I agree that they are smart. I will say this though. I'm very curious to see what they are going to achieve as the season goes on, because it can't be the same way that they've handled the officers in these other power shows, because where the enemy gets away, whatever, all this other type of stuff, and there's no consequences, it can't be the same. So I'm very curious to see that. Obviously, the last episode, they had this whole thing of, we're not going to get a task force. We are getting a task force now. So that's fine. But now that we are on to episode 3 and the task force has been announced, I'm expecting them to take action in the next episode. And I mean, swift action. So let's see where things go from here.
Yeah. That would work the best. Just dumb it down a little bit. I don't believe I'm even saying this. Dumb it down, slow it down a little bit for the cops. You can't be like, he's like a ghost. And in 2 seconds later, we got his prints. We know that he was killing people. He's connected to CBI. You just slow it down.
I agree. So we'll see what happens. But those were the only questions that I had. Were there any questions or things that you wanted to bring?
One of the things that was really interesting to me was the dynamic between Claudia and Walter. It was tit for tat. It was petty, but it's still consequential. The fact that Claudia was able to change the password so he couldn't get his money, and so he then went and stole all of her jewelry and money in the safe. These little games that they're playing with each other, and you can even add in Dum Dum Vic as well with his little psychological games that he's playing. I wonder overall, is this best for the family, especially when we have an ominous threat of like Dublin coming in and like gonna just kill everybody because you screwed them over and you owe them money. So I just wonder, is it best that they have this infighting pettiness, or should they just come together? Or will it take a death for them to come together? Because I see, particularly Harry has to go at some point. I just wonder.
Oh yeah,
I just love saying that word though.
And his son that was on the street, we didn't see his son yet this season, so something probably will happen to the son at some point, I'm assuming. But I will say this: the fact that they introduced this storyline of the bad pills, that means any character of importance or even a secondary character can take a pill and die. So if that is the fate of his son, that'll be a quite interesting twist, because he obviously he knows that Walter needs to do what he can to try to save business, to try to pay that debt to Dublin. So that'll be a very ironic twist if those pills, his son gets a hold of those pills and dies off those pills. That would be a pretty crazy twist if it happened. But we'll see. Go ahead.
Ding, ding, ding goes my head. So remember I had the whole theory about Kate. What if Kate is a red herring in this situation and it's not Kate? What if it's Jenard? Because if we're going to go and sell these pills to the blacks, that term that they used, we saw where Jenard went to go get the drugs. This is not somewhere that is, let's go to the universities of the Ivy Leagues of Chicago to go get our drugs. This would be considered that side of the track where those people live to go get those dirty drugs. So I wonder if it's actually Jenard that ends up taking the drugs, because he didn't get high. He got high on his own supply, but how did it end? He got high off of somebody else's supply, and that would be the spot that you would assume they would sell those pills to.
Yeah, that's a very good point.
So
I think they call that area heroin highway. That's what they call it. Yeah, that's apparently that's what it's named. But that is a very good observation. I believe that is a very good point. I just feel bad for the character, because drugs is something you do not want to mess around with, and obviously we saw how he was impacted by the heroin, so it can definitely lead to some other things. So we have to see where they're going with that. But that's a very good point, and I'm very curious. And again, to the stuff you said about Walter and Claudia, I do agree. The very ridiculous pettiness between the characters.
I loved it.
But I will say this: they definitely need to be concerned about Dublin. Dublin, obviously, I mean, I didn't feel as though Dublin was a threat in this particular episode. It feels like when that guy Brendan had his conversation with Walter a couple of episodes, that was at the only point where I felt like, okay, Dublin is watching them, but I still don't feel like they're going to do anything. So hopefully that changes in the next couple of episodes. They actually take action and do something, because Walter doesn't have a lot of time to pay them. He has to pay them by the end of the month. That's what they said in the first episode. So they should be taking some action pretty soon if he's not doing what he needs to do. So we got to see what happens.
That and the fact they killed that guy, or Vic did.
Yeah, he did.
Which I thought it was perfectly fine. I'm like, it got a little bit too over the top, because I just thought that the fact that you would call that thing when he called in the drugs was hilarious to me, and I thought that would be that. I didn't think he would then go and kill the representative of Dublin. That just seems so ridiculous.
Yeah.
But I just wonder, there has to be consequences for that, right?
Oh yeah,
killing the guy.
There should be some consequences, 100%.
Yeah, so like, Dublin, where you at? I'm waiting for him to come through. We need some fighting or something, because there needs to be consequences, and I just wonder if the consequences are going to fall back on Vic, or if they're going to just fall back on Walter, because that was just such a random moment, and I didn't know what he was expecting from Walter, to be like, I love your son, but like, he was legit angry.
No,
it was like, you're stupid.
Yeah, that reaction was funny. The way the acting and the voice is like, it sounds like the actor that played Walter was sort of laughing, like before he was saying it. Like, yes, I can't believe you're stupid. I laughed when I saw that scene. I rewound it. I went back and rewatched it again because it was so hilarious. And then also, yeah, some of the acting is a little ridiculous. The guy gets shot, and then falls out. There's he's bleeding out, nothing like that. Like, you assume one shot, he's dead. There's no.
I mean, that's one shot, and that's all it takes. Sometimes you just need to bloop, and then you go bloop. I mean, we all can't be Tommy with the machine gun walking inside of the penthouse.
Yeah, that's true.
That. But a shot, boom, that's all. That's good. I mean, but the clutching was like, oh, okay.
Yeah.
I just need there to be consequences for that. I think that Vic is getting a little too excited, and he needs to just dial it back a little bit. The whole calling on the police thing, that was enough. We don't need shootings at this stage right now. You just got started. You're drawing too much attention. Right now, let him be mad at Claudia. Now he's mad at you. So this is not going to work.
I definitely agree. So we'll see what happens.
Mhm.
So you had any other questions or comments that you wanted to address?
I wonder where Kate goes from here. Because she made her amends with, even though it was like, I am sorry. Sometimes that's all she can muster, and I think that even though it's been over 20 years or maybe 30, I don't know how old is Tommy. We're gonna assume 30s, but it's been like
Yeah.
basically over 20 years of bad mothering, and so I wonder what is going to happen. Where does she go from now? I like her. I want her to live for the moment. I like her little 12-step journey that she's on. I don't know what step is making amends, but it's getting there, and it's very cute, and I like it, and I'm here for it. Also, if her mother is alive, she's a terrible person, and if she's dead, I hope she rots in hell, because what she put that again, that whole situation of your daughter is 14. What are you doing?
Oh no,
I
the
have
mother
so
is
much
dead.
anger and questions. The mother,
Yeah,
good. I hope she's
the
rotting.
mother is dead. Yeah. So I
Let her rot.
unfortunately, yeah. So I agree. I do want to see what happens with Kate moving forward. One thing that we do know though with this episode, when they talked about the fact that she had JP when she was 14, she had Tommy when she was 16. So they have a 2-year time. So they have a 2-year time difference, which means that JP is the older brother. So that's one thing that was good, because I don't think we got an answer about that in the previous season. I could be wrong, but we'll definitely see what happens from here. I'm very curious to see what happens with Kate next for sure. So stay tuned.
Yeah, and and the fact that Kate is even admitting, I was terrible. I got high, I abandoned you essentially. And again, something as small as ice cream is very impactful to a child whose mother is never there and is always high. So that was just the perfect little moment there. But I'm just really interested in what happens with the PO, the parole officer, and the fact that he saw the dude in the barbershop. Is he going to be? Because give me my nosy Nancy-ness. Claudia and Walter. I wonder if this is going to just start creating more pettiness and fighting within the family. And the fact that Claudia would have all access to the passwords. Like, what is the consigliere doing? Does he not have any information? He needs to like get in on some of this as well, because you just need a backup plan in general, because family falls out all the time. Have some backup plans, at least write down the passwords, even though that's terrible, but you got to figure out something there. And then also we got the whole jail situation, which is going to be interesting to see how that works out. Rojas is very angry and is upset about that, but again, he doesn't want to be shipped up to the other jail where he won't get a wheelchair. So that should be very interesting. And then again, the Serbs are going to be very angry. So got to see what's going to go on with the Serbs. At this point, are they really like that important? Or was it just like a Jenard that was tying them still and making them relevant?
They appear to be very dangerous to Jenard, because he's the one that promised the territory to them that Tommy took. But I don't care about the Serbs. Like I said last week, Merkovich better get taken out this season. There's no way that this character should still be on this show after all the stuff that happened last season with him and Tommy. So I would hope that they take him out this season, whatever episode it happens, but it has to happen. That will solve the problem. And one other quick thing I do want to mention, because this was a good point that was brought up last week that Gary mentioned, I believe you mentioned as well. We saw the guy who is the boss to Miguel, and how much of a force he was to Miguel. Then in this episode, you see once again Miguel is showing you that he's taking charge of this situation because of what happened, and he's hurting his own family. So I like the dynamic where they're showing you from an episode to episode the balance of power, where you have one character you think, because in that first episode, they made Miguel look like he was a badass. He's doing all this other stuff, torturing people. Then the next episode, he's the one getting humbled. And then in this episode, again, he is the one torturing people. So I like that dynamic, that up and down. But that other guy, like I said last week, that guy also needs to get taken out. The one who was the boss to Miguel. Because the minute he started talking about his sister for no reason, oh yeah, I'll do all this stuff to your sister. He should have got taken out right there, but obviously you can't do that because he had no protection. Well, say what?
No, I like him. He puts that fear in Miguel. There's a good scare. Tommy, because here's the thing, Tommy's goal is to take over everything. He doesn't care about Miguel. He's not friends with Miguel. So if you are able to see, I think that it's a dynamic between, Miguel wants to be the big bad and he views himself as the big bad, but when he's in the presence of that guy, he's not the big bad, clearly. Mm-hmm. So Tommy can see that as a weakness and can manipulate that. It's just all about ego. And so that big scene of him with the hand, that was ego.
Yeah.
So I really feel that could be a way in to manipulate Miguel. We have the whole situation of what's going on with his sister. I don't know how that'll pan out. We do know from just the trailer aspects alone that they do end up getting together. We saw where he's walking into like a loft and she's just laid out in the bed. She's like, oh, and then they kiss. So we do know that they will be involved somehow. And this will keep chipping away at Miguel's ego. And that could make him weak, and Tommy can get in somehow. Because remember, we do not retaliate in anger. That never works out really well. So that was kind of what I liked about Jenard and Diamond. Diamond was analytical. Jenard is the hothead. They balance each other out. Now that they're separate, who's in the most trouble? It's not the analytical one. It's the hothead one. Now he's in the corner doing crack, so you gotta wonder what's going on there. So again, this could be Miguel's weakness. So I look forward to this. I do not want the boss to die at the moment. No, we're killing off way too many people, and not for killing of these characters, but just so fast and so furious. Calm it down.
Okay, we'll see what happens.
We'll see what happens. But I'm trying to remember, like, if let me see something really quick. If I could just bring it up, because I know that they announced like new cast members, and if within that announcement, it will show who could possibly be that new number.
Okay.
I just can't think right now in the realm of anything, because in anybody that we think of, I just don't know who would be. That's the only thing. But I am interested in knowing that answer. I just can't think of who it would be unless it's like some type of crossover. It's 2-bit. So
no. I was going to say 2-bit, no Diamond 2. No. Oh, well, we'll see. I mean, listen, I think we'll get our answer sooner rather than later. I for some reason, I do think it is the reporter, because she is the one that broke up with him. And the thing is that it will be a very messy situation. Diamond has this other girlfriend now, and now his ex is coming back. I could see if they want to take that route and make it a very dramatic Jerry Springer type moment, but I don't know if they're going to do that. And that's why I said we have to wait and see. That's why I assume this is somewhat business related and not a personal person trying to contact him, but we have to wait and see where the
reporter would be the most, but wait, the reporter wouldn't call Tommy. The reporter was with, what was it, Diamond?
Yeah.
So why would she call Tommy?
Oh, no. I thought you were talking about when Diamond got that text. I'm saying that the reporter, I still think the reporter could be the person that sent him that text. But we have to see.
Yeah. No, that makes sense. I thought the text for some reason was Tommy getting the text. But no, you're right.
Yeah.
I'm getting these confused. But yes, you're absolutely right. And so I do wonder what is going to happen now. The text could hold the key to everything. So make it dramatical. The reporter would just be the only thing. But even then, if it is the reporter, what does she have to bring into this story?
Yeah, that's a good point.
That would be impactful.
Very good point.
Because she brought nothing in season 1. And you can see he got over that real quick because he's now with the other girl.
Well, yeah, she's the one that sent the break. She's the one that sent the breakup text. So that's why I said, maybe they will reveal that the entire time she was using him to get close to him, and then that she said, okay, we have to break up now. I don't know what they're going to do with that, but I would prefer if it's somebody else and not that character, because it'll be more interesting for it to be a different character that we haven't met before as opposed to her. But we'll see what happens.
We'll see what happens, indeed, because I can't think of anyone. The only person I think that would be on the show, but it doesn't make any sense. Remember when they spoke to that guy who was Hispanic, who was like, oh, my brother. Remember his name was Chico or something. And he had a brother who was from Queens. But that wouldn't have any connection with them. That would only be solely connected to Tommy.
But I will say we will get revisited with that situation again when they brought up, because that guy was connected to Julio. So I'm pretty sure we're going to find out more. There's going to be another interaction with that guy and Tommy at some point this season, if I had to make a guess, because I'm pretty sure some people know what happened to Julio, and they may think that Tommy is responsible for that because he was a part of his organization. So I look forward to seeing where they're going with that, because I don't think that was just a mention of that character. They probably know something because they know who Tommy is. So we'll see. Yeah.
We shall.
But so were there any other thoughts before we get ready to wrap up our show?
No, I can't think of anything else. It was just actually really enjoyable, which is the first time for everything.
I agree. Very good episode. Looking forward to seeing the next episode, obviously. But no, that pretty much concludes our episode of Powercast for this week. Do you have any shout outs that you would like to give, Dana? To anybody?
Again, shout outs to everyone who listens to us and leaves comments and likes, subscribes. And thank you for that. Thank you for listening to what we have to say, and just thank you to the audience. And we will continue to have these conversations, and we have the interviews that is on the channel with the 3 directors. So that is something we have, and keep watching with the show, because it's actually good. If there's going to be a selling point, because remember, again, people dropped off. It was the first season's terrible, and it was still kind of man, this would be the episode to be look, there's something. We don't know if it's sustainable, but at this moment, this is the hook. This is what's going on. Watch this. So I just hope overall that the show continues to be good, and to shout out to the showrunner, because baby, you had a lot to flush out when it came to season 1, and you had to rebuild. It felt like from scratch, and this feels like the season that we should have gotten from season 1.
I agree.
So yay. And also, I know we're getting different sides of Tommy, but I miss my crazy Tommy. I hope we get a little bit in the coming episodes. I don't want him an extreme Tommy, but I miss a little bit of crazy Tommy.
I agree. We'll see. As for my shout outs, shout outs to everybody that continues to leave comments on these shows and continues to like the content. We like to see those comments. It keeps us going, keeps us motivated doing these discussions. And we definitely like hearing what a lot of you have to say, because a lot of you are pretty intelligent with some of your thoughts as well. So I would encourage you to continue leaving your comments, letting us know what you think about the episode. And again, shout out to Gary, because like I said, he wasn't here this week, but he is out of the hospital. So hopefully he will be back next week. But until then, we hope that you all have a great weekend. Take care of yourselves. We will talk to you all next week. So, peace out.
Out of peace.